So hi everyone, welcome to my studio or my art desk. Don't think you can, I can zoom out a little bit more with all my messiness, my messy desk. So welcome to my little art session for the Inner Child Summit with Tony. And I am going to be working in my large journal. This is a 16 by 12 journal. You don't have to work in a journal at all. You could actually work on a single sheet or in a smaller journal. I'm just for myself want to work on this particular journal today. If you are wondering about this journal, they are Robertson watercolor sketchbooks, and sadly they have been discontinued. So yeah, you won't be able to find them, to everyone's great disappointment. So let's do an inner child connected activity today. I'm looking forward to this, and I have probably already mentioned in the interview, or you may have seen me write about it online anyway, that I feel like healing or getting in touch with the inner child, expressing her or his voice and needs and feelings seems to actually be key to healing some of the childhood trauma that many of us have experienced. For a long time, inner child work was a little bit sort of not kind of clear to me, or I kind of didn't believe that the inner child actually existed. And oh boy, was I wrong. My inner child showed me after years of therapy. So nowadays I really like working with the inner child, or looking specifically at childhood experiences that have been that may have been unexpressed or unprocessed, and trying to reprocess them, or through either reparenting my inner child or by letting the inner child have a voice expressing what might be going on. So that is going to be my focus today for the art session. Okay, so this is one of my large journals. This is actually a slightly newer one, although some of it is quite old work. And I'm kind of trying to work in it a bit more. So working in journals, by the way, as a little comment, is a really great way to allow yourself more expressive and playful ways of working. When we're working on the more, let's say you have your precious watercolor paper on a block and it's expensive paper, that is a time where often, not everyone, but often the people tend to end up taking it incredibly seriously and putting a lot of pressure on themselves to make a pretty piece of art. And you can obviously cultivate a way that you don't approach a painting on precious paper like that. But if you have trouble with it like that, I do recommend getting a journal, because journals are a place where you can do expressive, quick, try out things, sketches that you don't finish, playful ways of, like, look, all this here is very playful and expressive, and I am able nowadays to also apply that to my papers that are sort of more precious. But if you struggle with that, I recommend getting a journal where you can play with texture and play with paint strokes and paint splatters and all that sort of lovely mixed media stuff that journals lend themselves so well to. So I'm just grabbing another couple of journals here where you can see, so something here, this is like a very playful way of working as well. Here you do scribbles and writing, and again, all this is doable in different types of on different types of pages as well. But the journal for me personally really takes on a kind of such a place where I give myself more permission to just express and play. So that's just a little by-the-by and a comment on working in a journal versus a clean piece of paper. So I'm going to work today on a double spread. However, I'm not sure if I'm going to use both the spreads. I'm going to probably work mostly on this side. And what I want to do with you is I want to first do an exercise of writing down emotions and connecting with ourselves, writing down what is alive in us, quote unquote, what we're experiencing right now in this moment with our non-dominant hand. And that is a really great way of accessing the inner child and or the right brain. So I'm not sure how many of you know about the left-right brain kind of makeup, but the right brain is known to be this more creative, intuitive, I was going to say non-coherent. That probably is true. And a like the left brain is very structured, logical, likes its systems. The right brain is all about intuition and creativity, and through it you can access your intuition and your inner child and sort of like subconscious and all that sort of stuff. So I want to start with that, and then I want us to play with layering. So we're gonna use some collage papers. We're gonna do maybe some stamping or some spray inks with some stencils. We may use different types of paint like acrylics and markers and watercolor to build up a bit of a layer. And what I want that layer to be is just again a playful place where you can allow your inner child to play with all the colors and the paints and the inks and the collage papers without worrying too much about, is this a nice piece of art? And then I do want to finish it off with a drawing or a character that sits on top of these layers. That will be a little girl sitting on a swing. Or you can make it into a male. You do not have to, depending on where you are in your art journey, if you find that too challenging, you may just want to leave it and simply be with the layering fun of it all. Or I like the idea of placing a carefree type of a child on a swing that is swinging in the sort of, mess of life and the expression of life, if you will. So that's what I want us to do, and that's what I'll demonstrate. This will happen in a time-lapse form because we don't have the time to do this slowly, because it will take probably about 2 to 3 hours. So it'll be time-lapse with subtitles. And the key thing here is for you to choose things like, if you're choosing colors and materials and collage pieces and paper and all this sort of stuff, try to, as much as possible, choose the colors and the shapes and the symbols that your inner child, that you as a child would have maybe chosen. So you're allowing your inner child here to express him or herself and to make the choices. So you may end up with something that doesn't look anything like what I'm doing. The point isn't really that you do exactly what I do. You can, no problem. But really what I love for you to do is to allow your inner child to be as present and has the sort of the leading role in this creation process as possible. So for it to have as the biggest kind of role, or the biggest voice in this process, so that it can really express. Yeah, and so again, you do not have to end up with anything that looks like mine. You could end up with something completely different because your inner child is wanting something different, and that is very good. That's awesome. We want the inner child to be like in control here, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so we're going to start. So the first thing we're going to do is I'd like you to take a ballpoint pen or a color pencil, or maybe a marker even. Perhaps avoid inky based Tombos and stuff because they will seep through your layers. I'm going to work with just a ballpoint pen at the moment, and I'd like you to us all to take a moment and just start to be still. Take a couple of deep breaths. Yes. And I'd like you to turn your attention inwards. And I'd like you to hold your pen or pencil in your non-dominant hand. So in my case, that's the left hand. And then I simply want to ask you to ask yourself is, what am I feeling, needing, hearing? What is happening for me right now? What do I want to express? Or any question that resonates with something along the lines of what is happening for me right now. And just scan your body, notice any feelings and sensations, thoughts or needs or anything that's happening for you there. Try to connect with the inner child part of you and see if he or she wants to say something. So you may notice something like it might say, and then write it down with your non-dominant hand, okay? So we're going to scribble on our page before we start to art on it, but we're doing it with a non-dominant hand. So you might see, I feel alone. And so the words, because it's your inner child, it might not speak in very elaborate, sentences. It might not, because your inner child wouldn't know how to. So just keep writing down. And you can do it with your eyes closed. It doesn't need to be legible. Just keep expressing anything that comes out. I feel lost. Now, in my case, I had a really difficult childhood, so there'll be quite a lot of negative things coming out. But I want you to know, and also, don't work on this if don't do this. Maybe skip this exercise if you've had deep trauma in your childhood and you haven't really worked on this with a therapist before. What I'm trying to say is be very careful and look after yourself when it comes to doing these kind of exercises if you don't have a support system around you, because they can be very powerful. So, or check with a therapist beforehand if you wanted to go ahead and do this, because they can, all sorts of things can come up when we're working with the inner child, and I want you all to feel safe and well looked after. All these kind of words can come out, and the thing is, I find it quite cathartic to let my inner child speak, because the inner child often, when we grow up, we just become these adults and we operate on a sort of adult level. But there's so many things that the inner child hasn't been able to say, or hasn't been heard about, or hasn't been loved for, or hasn't had the support to process these experiences. So it can be really powerful to have this inner child express itself, and for you to have your inner adult have a compassionate response to it. Okay, so. That said, I am confused. Okay, so you get the feeling, you get the concept of it now. So I'm going to fill my page up with more expressive, more anything that my inner child needs to say or is feeling, and we'll time lapse that part. Then I'll come back and tell you about the next steps. Okay, so once you've really expressed and written down everything that is present for you, and you can just go overlay as much as you want to write. I want you to go and grab a whole load of collage papers that your inner child likes the look of. Also, of course, take some time if you're feeling emotionally worn after that expressive place. And okay, let's maybe talk about that for a moment. So before you jump into this, do take some, depending on how emotive this was for you, please take a moment to sit with yourself, your inner child, and say, react to it with an empathic, compassionate response, such as, that must have been really hard for you, or I can hear how angry you are. I completely understand that you would feel upset about that. These kind of affirming, kind, loving things, say them to yourself. Try not to judge the inner child or tell it what to do. So don't go, oh, just let it go. No, don't worry about that. Or you shouldn't be thinking that way. Why are you thinking that way? That's wrong. You shouldn't be thinking. Don't say any of those things to yourself. Say loving, understanding, compassionate, kind things, so that the child feels heard and understood. That's all the child needs at this moment in time. Okay? So once you've taken the moment to do that, I'd like you to grab a stack of collage papers, and perhaps also start grabbing paints and any other kind of materials that you feel drawn to in this moment. And you think, I'd love to work with those, and I'd love to work with those, and I'd love to work with that. And try to react from the place of the inner child. The inner child wants to, look, I've got these beautiful collage papers. I have all sorts of collage papers actually, so we might grab a few of these. But like, try to react to what is your inner child want color-wise, shape-wise. Quite like these. And then we're going to start doing some layering. This is pretty with the butterflies in. I'm going to do some layering with paints and watercolor paints and acrylics, stamping inks and stuff like I just told you. So let's have a look in here. This is really cool. These books are great. So if there's anything in here that I like the look of. Stickers. We like stickers. Children like stickers. Oh look! They're very similar to that. I might take this out because it's a similar. So just try to delight in all of your materials that you have hanging around. Right, so just about the material. So I like to work with water-soluble crayons. These are Caran d'Ache Neo 2s. If you don't have them, don't worry. What you can do is just grab whatever you have available. I teach art online, so I have a lot of available art supplies available. If you don't have them available, don't worry. You can kind of work with what you've got. Again, it's all about letting your inner child have fun. So don't worry about having exactly the same supplies that I use. However, I will just tell you what I'll be working with. So water-soluble crayons. I'll also be working likely with color pencils, some Tombow markers. These are ink based. I might be working with a bit of acrylics, and then perhaps some inks and maybe some stamping, but I'm not sure yet. Maybe some washi tape as well. Washi tape is great for layering and collaging. Let's get some washi out. And if I work with any other materials during the next session, I will subtitle and let you know what I'm working with in case you want to know. Okay, now the other thing is I'm gonna sort of like the feelings that I have at the moment of this inner child, and what she really needed, I think, was a sort of a sense of safety and grounding. So I'm already noticing how, look, the purples and the greens for me work as quite grounding, these colors. So I've kind of ended up choosing greeny, purpley kind of colors, and I think that will probably be my color scheme. So I'll start grabbing colors in this same kind of color scheme probably as we go along. Eventually, once I'm going to add the little girl on the swing, I'll be drawing her first and then adding paint on as we go. Probably I'll be using either a Stabilo pencil or a graphite pencil. Alright, so let's get started, and again, you can follow my session as much as you like and or take it away, inner child. Okay, let the inner child just take the lead. You might end up with some really kind of childlike artwork, which is great because it means that the inner child is really present and really been heard. And or you might just like to do this exercise just to learn about the layering and how I create things, and that's also cool. However way this session supports you, go with it. There's no right or wrong way to do anything here, okay? Just be kind, compassionate and loving towards it. Treat yourself like you're a 3-year-old child or a young child, or treat yourself how you would treat another young child that you love to bits, okay? So that's how I'd like you to approach this. Don't get upset about if the art stuff doesn't work out. Just have both your inner child and a really loving, caring, kind adult present that is just witnessing and affirming and validating the feelings of the inner child. Alright everyone, so this section will be time-lapsed with subtitles, and I will be back once we finish the piece of art. Enjoy! we are with a playful page that has hopefully helped you access some of your inner child's voice. As you may recall, layering, before I added the girl, the layering process for me personally was very cathartic and very playful, and it doesn't require much precision and thinking and left brain organizing, if you will. No structure, you don't have to structure much. You can just kind of like really be pleasantly sort of connected to playful expression. So again, if for some of you, like adding a character like this might be too complex, then simply layering as we did and writing with our non-dominant hand what was happening for the inner child can be really a really great way of connecting with that inner child. And then of course I added the character on later on, which I really like doing personally. I always find the image of a child on a swing a really kind of wonderful image of, it reminds me of freedom and happiness and joy and playfulness. So I enjoyed adding this character on swing. And if you have done it as well, I hope it was enjoyable for you to do as a sort of a symbolic way of representing carefree, playful children or inner child. And obviously, of course, if you've gone with what your inner child is telling you, you may the page you've made may not look nothing like this, and that is also super cool and awesome. So all right. So I hope you enjoyed this today. Thank you for spending some time with me and being here for this tutorial. If you want to learn more with me, you can simply visit www.willowing.org. That's where I hold and run my classes. And also I really like to hang out with people on Instagram. I love doing Instagram stories, and I try to post there most of the days. All right, everyone. Have a lovely time creating, and I hope the rest of the summit is also inspiring to you. Much love. Bye-bye.